Mulcharmy Fuwalos is one of the most expensive staples Yu-Gi-Oh has seen in a long time, and today I want to talk about whether or not it's worth it. It's currently sitting at about $140, $150 a piece, which leaves you at about $450 for a set. And, a lot of people might be a little scared that they can't compete without it. We already know that's not necessarily true. We saw the YCS Niagara results, right? But there's a lot of people trying to scare others into thinking that you actually need this card to compete. And I don't think that's true. And I want to show you how applicable it actually is, how relevant it actually is, and whether you should get it. It all depends on how much winning is worth to you, like how much an incremental chance at winning is worth to you. If you're going to YCS, it might be worth a lot. But if you're just going to locals and regionals, I'm going to show you that it's not really a big deal at all. Okay? So we're going to do a little bit of math today. Hopefully that doesn't scare you. But I'm going to try to be as clear as I can and try to make it a little bit entertaining and easy to follow. So we're going to write it all down. I'm going to do this on paper because I think that's just the easiest way. And basically the question we're trying to answer today is Mulcharmy Fuwalos worth $150 a copy? We're going to try to answer that question today. We're going to start with some assumptions here to start off, but I know these assumptions aren't always true, and we're going to talk about how that affects things later on. But we're going to start with some assumptions. We're going to try to maximize the value of Charmy. Okay, I want to make Charmy as valuable as possible and make it come up as much as possible. So we're going to make some assumptions. We're going to say everyone is playing a Go first deck that I'm going to abbreviate Mulcharmy Fuwalos as MF. That MF is good against. And then we're going to say everyone is playing 3 Ash. And then we're going to say we are playing 3 Mulcharmy Fuwalos. Okay, and we're going to take a look at a few different scenarios in which you might be in. And you might be considering, hey, do I need to buy this card? Okay, so specifically we're going to look at what if we're playing a Go first deck that wants to side 3 Fuwalos, and this is like Pax Centurion list or a lot of the Snake Eyes lists I saw. We're just siding the Fuwalos for going second. We're gonna look at what if we're playing. What if we want to play a Go first deck that mains it, mains 3 Fuwalos, and then we're also gonna take a look at what if we want to play a Go second deck that mains it. And, I really don't think that you're ever going to play a Go second deck that sides Fuwalos, so we're not going to really talk about that or spend any time on it, okay? Another assumption we're going to make is that every game is 50-50 chance to win. And I know that's not exactly true, but it's really going to simplify things here. And we're going to take a look at what happens if that 50-50 is actually something like 60-40 if you open the Fuwalos. Because that could be true, and that could be a reason to play Fuwalos, and that's going to increase your percentage of, value, of course. Like, every game where you draw Shifter is not 50-50, right? So we're going to take a similar approach. But for now, we're just going to start with the 50-50 assumption, and we're going to see how that shapes out. Okay, so that's our starting point. Let's take a look. Let's start with our scenario number 1, which is our Go First deck that sides 3 Fuwalos, okay? In this situation, in every situation, we're going to assume there's 6 possible outcomes for a full match, okay? You could win game 1 and win game 2, right? And then your match is over. You could win game 1, lose game 2, win game 3. Win game 1, lose game 2, lose game 3. Lose, then win, then win. Lose, then win, then lose. Okay, these are the 6 possible outcomes for a match. Okay, the probabilities of each, assuming every game is 50-50, is 25%, 12.5, 12.5, 25, 12.5, and 12.5. Okay. Now let's take a look at which games Charmy actually comes up in. So, because we're siding it, it's never coming up in game 1. it's only coming up when we win game 1 and we assume our opponent is playing a go first deck. That's one of our assumptions, right? Because if we assume our opponent is playing a go first deck, then we can assume that Charmy will actually be good when we side it in, and we can assume that they're going to want to go first. So Charmy only comes up in the games where we win the previous game, because we assume our opponent will go first the following game, and then we'll put it in. So it comes up here, it comes up here, it comes up here, because we win the previous game, and then it comes up here and here. Okay, so it comes up in those particular games. So let's take a look at the chances that we're actually in those situations, and we're going to multiply some probabilities here. So in the first situation where it's win followed by a win, Charmy comes up in half the games. In this one, it's 1/3, 1/3, 0, 1/3, and 1/3. Okay, sweet. Now, in those particular games, we actually have to open the Fuwalos, right? And if we look at the Yu-Gi-Oh! Probability calculator, chance of opening at least one Fuwalos in a 40-card deck, we're going to assume we're playing 40, just to maximize our chance of actually seeing the Fuwalos, to try to give us our highest probability that it's applicable here, is going to be 34%. Okay? And that is going to apply to every single game. 34% chance of opening Fuwalos. Okay? Now, we also have to multiply by the chance that our opponent does not draw Ash Blossom. The chance that our opponent draws Ash is the same as the chance that we draw Fuwalos, which is 34%. So the chance that they do not draw Ash Blossom is 66. Okay? And now, this is going to be our probability that Fuwalos actually resolves and is impactful in a given match. So if we multiply across all of these and then add them all up, our probability is going to be about like 6.5%. So in a scenario where we are going first, we're playing a going first deck, and we're siding 3 Fuwalos, it will come up in 6.5% of matches. Okay? And that assumes that we're playing every match against a deck that Fuwalos is good against. That's not realistic either, right? So let's say we play half of our matches against a deck that Fuwalos is good against, because we play probably half against Yugioh and Snake Eye, but half against Tenpai and Labyrinth and all that stuff, because people are trying to play those decks that are not losing to Fuwalos, right? So Fuwalos is only actually good in about we'll give it 3.5% of matches. Okay, so if you're playing a go first deck where your only intention is to side for 3 Fuwalos, it's going to come up 3.5% of the time. Okay, so you're going to get a boost 3.5% of the time by paying $450. Is that worth it for you at locals? Is that worth it for you at regionals? Is that even worth it for you at a YCS? I mean, maybe. It just depends on how much you value that increased chance of winning, okay? Now, there's some argument to be made that if I draw Fuwalos, my win percent is going to go up. So really where that comes up is right here in these 3 matches, right? If we side in the Fuwalos here, this scenario becomes more likely than these 2 scenarios, because you're more likely to win the second one. Okay? So even if this becomes 30 and these become 10 and 10, this goes up to maybe 5%. Okay? So maybe 5. And this value here is our percent applicability. Okay? So that's the number you have to take into account if you're wondering, hey, is Fuwalos worth it for me? Now this is kind of the minimal amount of applicability. You're already not seeing it game 1 guaranteed, and it's only applicable post side a few times. So let's take a look at our second scenario where we're playing a going first deck where we're intending to main Fuwalos. Maybe it's more worth it for us then. All right, let's take a look. We're going to still have the same situations, same potential situations as before. So we're still going to start with that. Okay, but now when we take a look at which games it's applicable, well, we're going to also only side it in post side, or keep it in the main deck post side after the win. So we're going to highlight the exact same ones that we had above. But also now it's applicable every game 1. Okay? But not necessarily every game 1. It's only applicable in the games where you lose dice roll because you want to go first. You're going to pick to go first. Okay? So only half of the time in game 1 is it applicable, and then every time post side that we highlighted, it's applicable. So we can write that out with probability. Basically, for the first game, half the time for dice roll times half of our matches, plus the other half of the match, it's applicable, and that's going to be our percentage chance, or percent of the time that it's applicable. Now here, half the time for dice roll times 1/3 of the games for the first game, plus 1/3, and now it's going to be half times 1/3 plus 1/3. Okay, and now once again we have to actually open the Fuwalos in the games where it's applicable, so we're going to multiply by 34% in every scenario, and we also have to assume our opponent does not have Ash Blossom, so we're going to multiply by 66% in every scenario, and that is going to come down to about 12%. Okay, so now if we are intending to play a go first deck where we main 3 Fuwalos, we're going to come up to about 12% applicability, assuming we always want to, or we're always playing matches against decks that are good, that Fuwalos is good against. Now, again, like we did here, about half the time in reality is what we care about, right? So here, about half the time, we're actually playing matches against decks where Fuwalos is good. The other half is like Tenpai, Labyrinth, Centurion, all that kind of stuff. So really, this is about 6%. Okay, and then it's actually only a couple percent boost if we assume that we have an increased chance of winning game 1. Game 1 and game 2, we are gonna bump this up. It's gonna be maybe about 10% tops applicable. So if you're intending to actually main deck this card, it's actually applicable a bit more. And that makes sense, right? If you're only intending to side it, it's not going to be that applicable too much, right? But here, if we're trying to main deck it, then we get half the game 1s. It's actually good for us. So we're going to get about 10%. Now let's take a look at the final situation here, where we're playing a go second deck. We're playing a go second deck that is maining 3 Fuwalos. Okay, and now let's highlight the games where it actually applies. It's going to be the same ones. It's going to be similar as before. Every game 1, it's going to be applicable. And this time, dice roll doesn't matter, right? It's going to be fully applicable every game 1, because if we win dice roll, we're going to go second. And if we lose dice roll, we assume our opponent is going first. So we're going to give full applicability for game 1. And then for post side, we're going to assume only if we lose are we going to choose to go second, because we assume if we win, our opponent will make us go first. And then it won't be applicable. So it only is applicable after a loss. So that's going to be this one, and this one. Okay, so now let's go ahead and sort out our probability, or like our fraction of games where it actually applies. For this one, it's going to be half the games. We don't have to account for dice roll, like I said. For this one, it's going to be 2/3. For this one, it's 2/3. For this one, it's both games in the match. It's applicable. For this one, it's 1/3, and this one, it's also 1/3. Okay, and now we're going to do the same stuff with the chances that we actually open the Fuwalos, and then we're going to do the same thing with the chances that our opponent does not open Ash Blossom. Here we go. And then we kind of check all this out, and this comes out to about 15%. Okay, so if we're playing a go second deck like Tenpai or whatever, about 15% of the time Fuwalos will actually come up and be applicable. And then let's go ahead and take our factor of 2, where realistically we're only playing against decks where Fuwalos is good half the time. We'll give it, I know it's 7.5, but we'll give it about 8%. Okay, and then if we increase our win probability because of Fuwalos, we're going to actually increase this to probably about 12%. Okay, so now 12% is our percent chance, or percent applicability if we are playing a go second deck that wants to main Fuwalos. you guys can take away from what you want, but like if we're looking at this at a local or regional level, having a 5%, 10%, or 12% increase in applicability might not be worth $450. At a YCS, depending on how badly you want to top or win that YCS, it probably is worth it, right? I think it would be worth it for me because I want the prestige of winning or topping a YCS, so I would pay whatever money I have to maximize my chance of winning. And make no doubt, Fuwalos increases your chance of winning. But it only comes up a little bit. And it only increases your chances a little bit. Okay? Because of how infrequently it actually comes up and resolves. Okay? Let's compare this to a card like Maxi. Why is Maxi different? Okay? Maxi is different because if we take a look at this 5% applicability, that's because Charmy only comes up in these 5 highlighted scenarios. Maxi will come up in every single highlighted scenario. Whether you're going first or second, whether you win the previous game or lose the previous game, pre-side, post-side, Maxi is in your deck. Okay? So all of this stuff becomes 1. All of these numbers become 1, and this essentially becomes 34% times 66%, which is about 22%. So a card like Maxi, like Dimension Shifter, is going to be about 22%, whereas this is 5. Okay, and it's going to be 22% whether you're in this situation or this situation where we're main decking or this situation where we're going second. It's always 22%. Okay. Now let's take a look at a card like Fiendsmith Engraver. I paid $100 or I paid $90 a piece for Engravers on release, but I'm not considering paying $150 a piece for Fuwalos on release. Why is that? Because Fuwalos is applicable 5%, 10%, 12% of the time. Engraver, you don't even have to draw. This 34% is more like 90% because Engraver is useful in any game where you can put 2 bodies on the board. Okay, so this becomes 90%. Engraver is applicable in every single game, whether you're going first or second. So this becomes 90 times, 66 or so. Our opponent can't just negate Engraver by Ash. I guess they kind of could. Let's just assume yes. Engraver is applicable in 60% of games. I will have an increased chance to win. 60%. That is worth it for me. $300 for a 60% chance to have a better chance at winning every single game I play. For Fuwalos, it's a 5% increase if I'm only siding it. A 10% increase if I'm maining it. Okay, 12% increase if I'm maining it going second. And that's why, like Fuwalos, not being able to afford Fuwalos is okay. It's really not going to come up as often as you think, as often as it's hyped up to be. Okay, you're not don't doom and gloom that you can't afford Fuwalos because it probably won't come up for you that often. If you're going to a 4-round locals, chances are it will not come up in any of those games anyway. Okay, so yeah, that's where I'm at on Fuwalos. Hopefully that helps you guys think about whether you want to buy Fuwalos or not. Okay, and yeah, it all depends on how much this increased value, this increased probability of winning is worth to you. Okay, so yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I know there's a lot of like uncertainty here, like how much Fuwalos actually increases your win percentage, how much, your opponent burning Ash on Fuwalos is gonna help the rest of your engine resolve. Like there's a lot of like weird nuances you can critique, but like at a base level, this is what we're looking at. Okay, so yeah, hope this is useful to you. Hope this isn't too mathy for you. Let me know what you think of this video. And with that, we'll catch you in the next one. See you soon.